when it's just your favourite thing. Let's look. What else have we got? Accordingly. That's got a nice thing to it. Nikki says, unpopulated. Love it. It's music going. For anybody who's just joining us, we're just putting our favourite words, the ones that we like to say or hear in the chat box. Prohibited. Which makes you giggle, Freya. Yes, I like that as well. Prohibited. Okay, smashing. Thank you for that. Thank you for joining in. And we will now share the slides for today. Okay. So as I said before, welcome everybody to our Power of Words masterclass. And thank you for joining in. Before I start going into the content, just for anybody who doesn't know who Lafology are, and I'm sure a lot of you do, I'm sure you're people who come to regular webinars, but we are a learning and development company. We try and do things a little bit differently with a combination of laughter and humour and neuroscience and psychology as well. And I am ably supported today by the lovely Curtis Stewart from Lafology. So if there are any messages that you want to ask throughout, please do message him or message me. But obviously, I'm keeping my eye on the chat as it goes through. Now, this is just a short 45-minute session today on the power of words. We do much longer sessions either online or face-to-face. And this could be part of perhaps a positive communication session for whole teams, or something broader, part of a leadership program, perhaps, on how we can be truly human leaders. So that's a little bit about us. Let me just move on. So I'm going to put some phrases, I guess, in the up on the screen in a minute. And I want you to tell me your first thoughts when you see them. Okay, and just to say, there are a lot of people online today, so I will be calling some out, the people who contribute the most, maybe who make me laugh, and you will get a goodie bag sent to you if you let us know your address afterwards. So a little example, if you don't know what the Lafology prizes are, we have Lafology pens. So if you're someone who likes a bit of stationery, then please do give me a whoop for that. We have, for the stylish yet practical amongst you, we have key rings that double as torches. Oh, we've got a few whoops already. Thank you very much. The quickest, fastest finger first was, let me have a look. I think it might have been Marcia. Bear in mind that at the end, I'll be giving out my details for you to get in touch. You will be the first person to get a prize. We have Squidgy Men. If you walk them now, you won't just get a prize. It's not that easy after this. And we also have Lafology books. So you will get a bumper bag of goodies if you contribute. And I noticed that. So first phrase I would like you to comment on is this: Blue Monday. What do you think? Where does your head go the minute you hear those two words? Oh, curly whirly, somebody's reminded me. Yeah, that's the only reason you're here, Ali. I do apologise. Yes, we do, of course, have the curly whirlies as well as part of the goodie bag. So let's have a look. Depressing, sad, negative. Yeah, music. So Blue Orders, New Monday. Yeah. Heard an excellent rendition of that yesterday, which I can send you the link to if anybody is interested. So look, what else have we got? Holiday gimmick, Paula. Absolutely, yeah. And even though we know that, so most of us know that this was designed 2004 by a chap called Cliff, and he's since admitted that it was pseudoscience. There's nothing behind Blue Monday, because you can't predict when everybody is going to have a wobble with their mental health or feel sad or feel depressed. And it was just a gimmick to sell holidays. But although we know that, our kind of bias, things that we've been told before, goes to the thought that today is a sad day, which it doesn't have to be. We have a choice to make. Okay, next one, Black Friday. What do you think of when you hear the word Black Friday? Lost my scroller. What have we got? Deals. Yeah. Rip off, somebody says. Absolutely. Pressure to buy. Yeah, we feel under pressure, don't we? We wait for Black Friday and think, right, today is my day. to get all these fabulous deals. Rush, hurry, hurry, says Marcia. Marcia, you're definitely getting those prizes now. Not long till Christmas, says Deborah. Yeah, all of those things. And again, if you look into the research, and I think it's which data, actually, there's a tiny percent of deals, but 90 something percent of things that are on sale on Black Friday are no cheaper than they would be at any other time. And I used to have a friend whose job it was, they worked in a shop, and it was their job to go around the week before or 2 weeks before Black Friday to mark things up so that then on Black Friday, they could go back to the original price. So again, we know that, but we still get drawn in by it, don't we? Okay, last one, the first of the month. The first of the month. So we've got New Start, we've got bills, pinch and punch. Yeah, white rabbits. Nobody said no returns yet. Pinch, pinch and punch. It's our excuse, isn't it, to bruise and batter family members. It's a given. And has anybody started now pinching and punching people online? So our fabulous Stephanie Davis, who is a wonderful human being, but she started pinching and punching me with emojis on the first of every month. And because she gets up at 5 in the morning and I don't, she's always first to get me. Okay, so just a little warm up, but important that we recognize how important words are. And as I say, even if we know that we're not doing a great job. This is not rocket science, what we're going to talk about today, but sometimes when we're busy, if we're multitasking, if we're tired, if we've not had a good morning or whatever, sometimes the words that we use and the way that we use them are incredibly helpful. And we're just going to spend, as I say, the next 40 minutes or so thinking about where we can make little slight tweaks, changes in our behaviors. So let's move on. Okay. So at Lifology, we talk a lot about our good humour ingredients, the things that engage other people. And it's not just the words that we say, it's also our facial expression, it's body language, how we hold ourselves, what we do with our hands. We all talk with our hands, but there are times when we feel that we can't, maybe if we're presenting and we stand with our hands behind our back or in front of us. It's about our voice, tone and pitch, which again, if we're tired, it can become quite monotonous. And it's about the types of words that we use. Now, I think this is really interesting because in a room with people, you can read how they're feeling perhaps a little bit better, I think, than online, because online it can be quite hard to tell how people are feeling. So what have we got here? We've got Marcel saying, my face is naturally sad, but I'm a bubbly person. Okay, Marcel, thank you for sharing that. We've got 100% people understand that it's harder to read people online. So maybe if you're a leader or a manager or you work with other people in your team, you don't have to be a leader and a manager. How do you find out how people are doing, particularly when you mainly chat to them online? What do you do? Yeah, so always being told to cheer up. And that's not helpful, is it? That's a little bit of toxic positivity, which we will talk about later. So look, what else have we got? Sarcasm doesn't convey. You're absolutely right. It's quite hard to do sarcasm well with positive intent, particularly when you are online. Sometimes asking them to put their camera on, because that can be hard as well if people haven't got their cameras on. We can sense a little bit more of how they're doing. Check-ins at the beginning of meetings. I like that, Jack. Yeah, absolutely. Find out how everybody's doing, maybe on a scale of 1 to 5. Although bearing in mind, some people may not. It depends on the culture that you've got and that you've created. Some people might not be happy to share that. Ask them and use the Thriving or Surviving guide. I like that a lot. We actually do a session on surviving to thriving around mental health. Let's have a look. What else have we got? We've got use emojis. And that's nice for something that isn't too formal. I agree with that, Nikki. Yeah, lots of ideas, but it's important to think about how you are online as well. So we're reading other people, but what are you doing? Now, research shows from a woman called Amy Cuddy a few years ago, research shows that if we spend our whole day hunched over a computer or hunched over a phone, then different neurotransmitters are released, and they are cortisol, noradrenaline, adrenaline. And they are not the most helpful of neurotransmitters when we're trying to build relationships. So being aware, if you've got a big meeting and you want to come across well, doing a bit of power posing, or I don't know, a few star jumps, or going for a quick walk around in outside, something like that is more likely to release different neurotransmitters like dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins, and they will impact on how you come across online. Okay, so my next question to you is, how often would you say, and this can't be done all the time, but how often would you say you have transactional conversations? So it's just business as usual, things about outcomes, you have an agenda, you start straight off with the agenda. And how often do you make those warm connections with people? So we're going to talk about the type of language you use, but what kind of situations are you creating within your teams? So just any ideas as to what you do. And as I say, you can't spend all day, every day in meetings, kind of having those really just friendly chats. Things have to be done. We have to get stuff done. But what do you do to make sure that it's not just transactional? What are the messages that you're giving from the questions that you ask and the things that you say? Let's have a look. Psychological safety, Lauren. Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Making sure that everybody can speak up, be themselves in a room, challenge if they want to, be happy to make sure to say that they've made mistakes. All of that stuff is great. Sharing lunch, Christina. And again, how often is that? That might be once a week that everybody shares lunch together, either in person or perhaps, online. Somebody recently in a session said that every Friday morning they have croissants and coffee as a team. And maybe one of the people in the team is very keen to crack on and get going. But if they start to do that and talk about business, then other people say, oh, hang on a minute, this is just the kind of time where we chat and find out how each other are. Look, what else we got? Get on a little bit early, Deborah. I like that. So you can have that chat beforehand and then get down to business as usual. I like that. What else have we got in here? Take time to check how everyone's doing at the start of a team meeting. And again, it's about knowing your people, isn't it? Some people will be very, very happy to share. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. And sometimes overshare. Other people are possibly a little bit more reticent or a little bit more introverted. So they might prefer that one-to-one check-in or an email conversation instead, perhaps sometimes. Lots of great ideas. I'm not sure if anybody's mentioned it, but simple things like getting to know people's children's names. I did a session recently where there was a chap in there and he said, I've been the leader of my team, 5 or 6 people. And I've done it for a while, for a few years, and I've never learnt their children's names. So if he knows that there's a sports day going on or something like that, he will follow it up, which is great, but he will say, how did your son do? Or how did your daughter do? Rather than learning them. I like that. Dogs' names, Helen. I like that. Yeah, absolutely. So it might be that you just keep little diary cards or partners. Yeah. Holidays. I like that, Deborah. Again, just checking what have they got that's big and coming up? And do you need to just make a record of it in your calendar, in your diary, to follow up afterwards? Because that builds those great connections and that builds then into those lovely warm conversations. Let's have a look. And sharing birthdays as well. That's a nice one, Anne. So as I was saying, thinking and communication styles. So I don't know if you know what yours is or if you can work it out from this diagram that we have here. We're a mix of all of them. And this comes from Insights, a company that we work with within businesses to help people to understand perhaps why they gel with different people a little bit more easily than others. So on the right-hand side, the red and the yellow tend to be extroverted. They are the people who will chat very happily about their weekend. Reds want to get on with it a little bit. They're quite direct and they will want to crack on. But then on the left-hand side, they are possibly more introverted people. At the bottom, the greens and yellows are people orientated. So they will probably ask you how you are. And the top two are task orientated. And that makes a huge difference. So we've got people saying what they are. We've got a lot of yellows coming through, sunshine yellows, blue green there, coral. So that's more introverted. Lots of yellows. It's good that you know. It's good that you know. And do you know what your team are? So, for example, I'll give you an example. So, back to Stephanie, our CEO, she is very red. Okay. And I am predominantly green, green, yellow. Now, when I first joined Laughology, I've got an English degree and I like properly punctuated emails. I like lengthy emails that give a lot of detail. She is dyslexic. So very early doors, she said to me, when you're sending an email, I don't need that amount of level of detail. I just want bullet points. Whereas I need more. Now, when she sends me a WhatsApp, I will reply in very abbreviated version, and sometimes I write it and then have to take bits out. But she will send me a WhatsApp and say, right, you need to do X, Y, and Z. And then a couple of seconds later, she will send another message to say, and how are you? So she's remembered, which is nice, but it's not her go-to. So just being aware of your own style and how you think you build great relationships, but also what other people in your team are thinking and how they want to be communicated with. And it's no good as leaders perhaps thinking, right, this is just me, this is how I communicate with everybody, and they're all going to get the kind of same deal, because that won't work. So human beings are very complex, though we're all different. So being able to flex your style to meet the needs of the other person is a great skill to have. So let's have a look what we've got here. Have to dial up your red to combat any challenges, which is hard. And I wonder if it's the right thing to do, says Sarah. Absolutely. I think we all dial up in different situations, don't we, according to what they need at any given time. I think it's how you do that. And if you need to be your authentic self, of course you need to be your authentic self, but adding a little bit of more direct, decisive behaviors is not a bad thing, particularly as a leader. Let's have a look. So Emily, you're the same as Steph. You always say what needs doing and then remember. And it can be absolutely draining. I know somebody else who is a red, and she's actually in a very people-orientated role. And she said, having to care and show that you care can be exhausting all day sometimes. Let's have a look. That's a good one, Katie. Team deck with people's preferences on. And making sure you just look at that before you have those conversations to remind yourself, because you won't always remember. Okay, we've got lots of people. And as I say, this is not rocket science. A lot of you obviously have insights, but it is about just reminding yourself sometimes and reflecting. If a conversation didn't go as well as you might have liked, why was that? And it might be that, there's all sorts of, maybe you were trying to multitask, which never goes well. If you're trying to send an email and talk to somebody, neither get done very well. But it might also be because you didn't get quite the right tone or the right level of detail, because we know blues like a lot of detail and a lot of information, for example. Seeking to understand, Daniel, absolutely, and then to be understood. Couldn't agree more. Okay, let's move on. So whereabouts on this scale do you think you are? So just have a think. Do you think you are a pessimist, or do you think you are an optimist? And I'm particularly thinking about work, but it might be slightly different. Some people say that they're different in different settings. And also how that conveys to what you say and how you say it. So do you think you're a pessimist? Do you think you are an optimist? And how does that affect what you say and your actions when people are around you? So a lot of people are saying optimism. Okay, Emily, I really like that point. So optimism can sometimes come across as naive. Emily, are you able to unmic? Would you be happy to unmic and just tell me a little bit more about?
Yeah, I'm generally quite optimistic in reasons behind people doing things or kind of an outcome that we might expect, but I sometimes feel that that's me being naive and that I should be a more shrewd businesswoman, and think worse of people, which doesn't feel comfortable, but sometimes, well, quite a few times I'm proved wrong in my optimism.
Yeah, I think I'm probably in that camp as well. Thank you for explaining that a little bit more. Yeah, definitely understand what you mean, that you give everybody a chance, and I think that's a fair thing to do, but perhaps sometimes it needs to be a little bit more measured initially, to see how things go. Let's have a look. So, people agreeing with you, Emily? Uh, benefit of, yeah, sometimes get the eye roll when I say give people the benefit of the doubt. Absolutely. Okay, so this is why I'm asking. So we tend to say, I think a couple of people said I'm balanced, which is brilliant, but we tend to kind of put ourselves or think about ourselves in a box. We're either an optimist or a pessimist. And there will be people in our teams as well that we label sometimes and say, well, they're going to see the worst in this because they are the eternal pessimist. Actually, I think blind optimism doesn't help because then we can make really careless mistakes and dive into things and judgments. But also, really defensive pessimism doesn't help either because we don't have that growth mindset necessarily. We won't try new things. We always fear the worst. And it's good to be able to understand what risks we are taking, but not do anything because risks are involved. So really, we're aiming to be somewhere in the middle. So those of you who said, I'm balanced, I'm somewhere in the middle, that is the ideal place to be, if you like, at work in particular. So this is where we embrace new ideas and new ways of thinking, but we also calculate the risks, where we are prepared to have maybe stretch mistakes, but not sloppy mistakes. So again, we kind of make that judgment call early on. But again, think about what this says for the way that you talk to people and whether or not sometimes if you're being blindly optimistic, maybe in your head, you're thinking this is going to be amazing, it's going to be brilliant, but just maybe tone it back a little bit to say, right, I understand that some people might have concerns, and that's fine, and we need to raise those, but not kind of push things through all the time with blind optimism because people will judge that a little bit. And it links very much. Let's have a look what have we got there. Fine line sometimes between being a strategic pessimist and a realistic optimist. Yes, there is. There really is, Elisabetta. And it is about getting that right, isn't it? And you won't always get it right. And we know that sorry isn't the hardest word at all. Sometimes we make mistakes and it's okay to say, look, I was maybe a little bit too optimistic or a little bit too pessimistic on this one. And this is what I've learned as a result. And being that vulnerable leader in a team or vulnerable person in a team, going back to the psychological safety, being the person who's happy to say, look, that wasn't quite right, is brilliant role modeling for everybody else. Okay. Okay, so this is on a similar theme, really, around where sometimes we feel that we need to be positive in challenging situations. And of course, it helps if we are problem solving and solution focused. It really, really helps. But actually, sometimes that positivity can be too much and it can become quite toxic. So the idea that we have to be happy 24/7 at work in particular, that is not realistic. That's not how life works. We go up and we go down, and there are bumps, and there are times when we're feeling overwhelmed, perhaps, or overloaded with work. And this is where we talk about it is okay not to be okay. When people say that I'm fine, just very busy, it's like, well, are you good busy? Are you bad busy? Or, do you need some help? Are you procrastinating and not getting things done? Oh, what is happy? Great question. We do a session all about what is happiness and what isn't it. Here, we're talking very much about realistic happiness. So what we don't do at Lifology, we don't go round and advocate that everybody skips through a meadow, holding the hand of the one that they love, whilst eating a fudge and soft music playing in the background. If you can get a bit of that, do it. It won't hurt you at all. It will do you good. But what we're talking about is kind of that realistic happiness. So understanding when things are going really well and kind of emulating them and making links and applying those to other situations, but also knowing when things are going not as well as you would like, and having plans and support networks to help you get through those trickier times. So that's essentially what we do. We're talking about realistic happiness in all of this. Life based on social media. I mean, we know, don't we? And we all do it. I've just joined Instagram. I'm a bit late to the party, but I've just joined Instagram, and already I'm seeing photos of people living their perfect lives. And we know that there are probably 600 photos taken for each one that gets posted. But it's called Compare and Despair. There's a great YouTube clip on it that says that we always look to people that we perceive to be happier than us. We don't look at other people. We do that. We compare and despair, and it impacts on our mental health and well-being. So denying negative emotions. All emotions are good, and this is what we should be given the message as. And if kind of the perceived negative emotions, but if we are sad or angry or worried, anxious, whatever it is, that's a helpful emotion for us to have in life, because we know then that it can give us the kind of kick up the bum to do something about it. I know that I'm feeling like this. What can I do to help myself? So Carla, rarely go on Facebook. I'm not on Facebook. I don't think I ever will be, Carla, but yeah, absolutely. So people who are not willing to seek help, this is a really common thing. When we go around to businesses, people feeling that they need to do something on their own, which we know sometimes is great, but more often than not, collaborating, joining forces, finding out who's done something similar before and how it went, using Google or any other search engine that's available, looking beyond the organization at what's happening elsewhere to give you ideas. They're all important things, but sometimes, particularly online, and particularly with silos seeming to be more evident than ever, we don't look beyond. And again, as a business, if you're working in a business and that business wants to improve, that ability to seek help and to search for help is really, really important. And then this last one, judging others on not being positive. So whoever it was at the start who said that they're often told to cheer up, it might never happen. That's somebody making a judgment based on their own kind of feelings or whatever. And actually it does need kindly challenging if you can, because it is part of toxic positivity. So if you can, just say, look, can we have a little conversation? It might be a tricky conversation, but it's really important that we have this so that you know how that makes me feel. Okay, let's have a look. So Christina, feeling pressure, lack of confidence, what the others will think. Sorry, Christina, I've lost the thread of what that in particular is related to. Can you unmic? Are you happy to unmic and just tell me a little bit more?
Yes, I just want to mean like when someone needs to speak it up, we feel that pressure over the others looking on you, that you say that maybe they don't have I'm thinking like they don't have the confidence, they don't know what to approach. So that was my thoughts.
Yeah, lovely. Absolutely, Christina. We worry a lot, don't we, about what other people think of us? And more often than not, that's wonky thinking. In psychology, it's called common cognitive errors, but we don't use big words with lithology. We use simple language, and it's wonky thinking. So we assume somebody has an impression of us, and the chances are that they don't, but that impacts on how we then interact with them. Lovely. Bye, Heather. Have a good afternoon. Let's have a look. Let's move on. Okay, so here's an example of some toxic positivity. Yeah, I don't know if anybody uses the word vibes. And I can't imagine many people say good vibes only, but it must have been said at some stage for us to use that as an expression. Other people have it a lot worse. And sometimes that's true. And it is good to help you keep perspective and to think about all the things that you are grateful for. But it is okay sometimes to say, right, okay, I know this is a situation, other people have it worse, but this is where we're at the moment, and it's tricky for us, and we need to help ourselves to get through this. So yes, a nod to you know, things could be worse, but actually acknowledging where you are now. Smile, it might never happen. These are things that I'm sure I've, apart from the vibes one, I'm sure I've said them all at some stage, and you probably have too. But it is just a case of, as I say, just pausing, just knowing that this wasn't the most helpful thing to say in this situation, and maybe saying sorry if you have said it. On the flip side, this is what a genuine optimist would look like. Again, all emotions are good. They help us decide what to do. Who can you get for support if things are going wrong? What support networks have you got? Do you need signposting to places within work that will help you? And that might be counselling services, or whatever it is, HR, whatever it is. And again, it's okay to cry. Can I get you a tissue or a hug? Please ask before you dive in. I'm a hugger. Lots of people are huggers. Lots of people aren't. They don't want a hug. So don't just go in unexpectedly on someone. They might not appreciate that at all. So just always check if a hug will help or not. Okay, moving on. Just in the chat box now, I'm going to have a drink while you put things in there. Oh, what do you need from me, Ruth? I like that. That's a lovely answer. What do you need from me? Is really good. And sometimes it is nothing. It really is nothing. But actually, you've asked me, and maybe in a week's time or a month's time, I know that I can still say to you, actually, there is something you can do. So in the chat box, how do you feel about giving or receiving, I guess, but mostly giving feedback to other people? So how do you feel about it? Really difficult, nervous, unsteady. Some people are comfortable. Some people find it awkward. Worried. Yeah, it depends on the situation. That's a good one as well. Used to avoid it. Think it would lead to conflict. Oh, I've lost you now. You've gone off my screen. Think it would lead to conflict. Now I see it's having yeah, it is about having a conversation, isn't it? It absolutely is. And I think if we kind of view it as that and a helpful conversation, we hope, then it puts a slightly different slant on it, Daniel. So look, what else have we got? Important, otherwise you get the same mistakes every time. Absolutely, says Bruce, I agree with you. But it is again about creating that culture where people understand that, isn't it? Because we know that some people, if they're about to receive feedback, really worry, they become really anxious. And actually, sometimes if their amygdala is on overload, it's hard to have those conversations because they're not listening. They just want to get through this and get out the door or get offline. Immediate in the moment is best, Delphine. Yes, it is. We deliver a program called Big Chats, Little Chats, and it's all about having those in the moment conversations that are really helpful, and they can be from leader to member of the team or the other way around, or peer to peer, and that's how whole teams improve. Have nerves, but like that, as it shows you, yes, it does, Karen. Yeah, you want to get it right, don't you? And it's particularly if it's a tricky message, it's really important, not just what you say, but how you say it. Yeah, Rob, I get that. If it's positive, it's easy, but not done enough. Oh, thank you for saying that, Rob. I love that. Yeah, it isn't done enough. And what often happens, well, we'll talk about it in a minute, actually, about how we give feedback regularly and positively and well. But if it's negative, it's harder. Yes, it is. Okay, so we've got this model that you will get all the slides, and nobody's asked, but you will get all the slides. And this is a great model for giving feedback. We've also got one for receiving feedback, which I haven't included today, but I'll make sure that I sent that to you as well. And it's all about doing this well. So the first thing that you need is evidence. Has anybody ever tried to give feedback and been very aware that they didn't have all of the facts, all of the figures, all of the information that they needed, and they ended up fudging it? Okay, so it may just be me. You may not have done this. So a story, I was a head teacher many, many years ago, and very early into my headship, something had happened with one of the children, and the member of the teacher said to me, right, you need to ring the parents and you need to tell them all about it. So it's like, okay, I will do that. And very quickly, I was on the call and the parent was asking me questions, very specific questions. And I was aware that I didn't know the answers. I had a choice. I could stop the conversation and say, right, okay, it's last thing on a Friday. I need to talk to the teacher. They're not here at the moment, and I will get back to you Monday morning. Or I could carry on. And I chose in that instant to carry on and fudge it. And you come off, don't you? And you just think, well, that was not good. I didn't do myself proud and I didn't help the situation at all. So it should be from the people. Yeah. So secondhand is hard, isn't it? Because you haven't got all the information. And even if you're there with the person giving the feedback as a support, actually having them in the room is really important. You are always, yeah, that's not helpful, or you never. They're really kind of final words and not generally accurate. So much better to have the stats. Two sides to every story, Marcia. Yeah, absolutely. So that's the first thing when you're giving feedback, to make this conversation go well. And it's also to be aware of your biases when you are picking up that evidence. So we know with confirmation bias that you might be tempted to look for the evidence that backs up your initial idea and to discount some of the other evidence that's contrary to it. So it is about taking that really broad look at what information you've got and then drawing from that, as opposed to just finding stuff that backs up what you want to say. Then explaining the effect that this is having, and that might be on the team, or it might be on the whole organization. It could be on reputations and things like that. So giving it the why. Why is this important? You all know about Simon Sinek, and he says that this is what we need to do in all situations, because the brain understands that, and it makes things easier for us to implement when we understand why we're doing it. Empathy is important as well. Putting yourself in their shoes can really help. Absolutely, Karen. It's vital, isn't it? And if you are finding that difficult, it is about asking them those questions, isn't it? So change, what do we need to see that's going to be different going forward? And keep asking those curious questions. What's important? How can we change this? What small tweaks can we make, or big things can we do to improve this situation? But then ensuring that we continue with that. So we've all given feedback, I'm sure, and we've seen the person try really, really hard for a week, perhaps. And then we know that our brain loves its comfort zone, doesn't it? It loves kind of returning to old habits. New forms of behavior are quite tricky to embed, and you need to do it over a length of time, regularly, consciously, effortfully. And so it is about checking in all the time with that person afterwards. We had this conversation, I've documented it, I've emailed you it, this is what we've agreed. Is it still happening? Because as I say, it's human nature to have a bash and then think, no, actually, I'm going to go back to what I always did. Okay, let's move on. So, having talked about feedback, at Lafology, we like an acronym. So these are our acronyms. So feedback, it's always important, isn't it, to reflect on something that has happened, but not to dwell on it. It's the unchangeable past. And as you see here, it makes us sad. So it solely focuses on the past. It's after an event. There's nothing we can do about it. We all know what happened, and it demotivates people. As I say, it is important to learn lessons from, but more in respect of what are we going to do going forward. Now, I'm very aware that looks ahead in the feed forward is the same as future orientated, really. But to give us a lift, we need a lift. So, yeah, things that look forward, that are in the future. What can we do differently? Things that are developmental. So again, that's giving it the why. Why is this important for your own development or for the team development? And things that are timely. So coming back to your point earlier, sorry, I can't remember who it was, but in the moment, because then people, if you tell me something I've done, I've got no recollection of it whatsoever, and it isn't going to be a very helpful chat. Whereas if we talk about it almost straight away, that will be much better for us. Okay. This is if we focus just on the person and we say to them, you're brilliant, they go, lovely, I don't need to do anything else. If we say, it's just not one of your strengths, they go, no, fair enough, you've noticed, it never will now be mindset. If we just focus on the outcome, great job, well done, lovely, I don't need to do anything else. Or it could have gone better. Yeah, it could. Again, it reinforces the fixed mindset. And whoever give as much positive feedback, and actually that is really important. So saying something to somebody like, great job for that customer, so we've acknowledged the outcome, but because you took that extra time, because you made that extra phone call, you sent a couple of chase-up emails, that's why they've come back and made a different inquiry, another inquiry. And that will help the person to think, right, okay, that's what I need to do to go back in future. This is how I get more work, or this is how we get more business, or whatever it is. And it gives them more information. But we're so quick. Life is so quick. We say really quick things. Great job. If we just took a little bit longer every now and again to say why it's a great job, it helps people to develop even more. Yeah, growth feedback shows you care. I've lost you. Shows you care and you want to help. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, great. Let's move on. I'm very aware of time. For anybody who knows me well on this call, they know that I can sometimes go a little bit over, but I'm going to try really hard not to. So we talked about other people, the words, the power of words when we're talking to others, and how important it is to just stop, think about what we're saying, what we're about to say, and maybe tweaking it slightly or not saying it at all sometimes because it's not the right moment. What about the thinking and the words that we say to ourselves? We are our own worst enemies for this. We tend to, things that we say to ourselves, if somebody else said them to us, we'd either be furious or cry, but somehow it's okay for us to say them to ourselves, and it's not okay, as we know. So are you a person, what's your go-to? This is one of my favorite Laughology slides, and I always recommend that people print it off and stick it up somewhere for when something hasn't gone very well, a conversation hasn't gone very well, or a meeting hasn't gone right, whatever it is, what happened and why. So we are our own worst enemies? Absolutely, we are, Anne. So what do you do? So are you a person who jumps to conclusions? You walk into a room, somebody looks at you a little bit funny, you think, and you think, what have I done? What have I done to upset them? I don't know what I've done. Are you a person who feels like an imposter? I'm not going to use the words imposter syndrome, but feels like an imposter. Are you the person who thinks, I don't know why I'm here, actually? And I feel like I'm not as knowledgeable as other people. I feel like I'm not as skilled. Are you the person who does that? I am a should or must person. I will beat myself up. So an example recently, I kept telling myself I should have phoned my friend this week. I should have phoned her and I didn't. Now, instead of that, okay, I didn't, unchangeable past. What I could say to myself, okay, well, she didn't phone me either. So it's down to both of us. But next week, I'm going to put a time in my diary and I'm going to ring her at that time. And that's far more helpful than these other ideas that are going around in my head. So what have we got from people? Yeah. Destroy yourself at the simplest hurdle. Yeah. Magnification, or I'm blowing things up out of all proportion. Yeah. Catastrophizing. A bit of mind reading. Yeah, we think we know what other people are thinking when actually they're probably thinking about something completely different. Yeah, all of these things. So I would recommend, as I say, we're running out of time now, but I would recommend that you print this off and say, right, what's my go-to? And for some of us, it's all of them, and that's okay. But it is recognizing and stopping ourselves, recognizing it, call it out. This is what I'm doing at the moment. Notice it, name it, and then neutralize it. Okay, what can I do going forward? So I've just given a whole speech to my team. I didn't mention anything positive. I just went straight for the negatives. Next time, what will you do? It's about giving that balance, isn't it? Rather than just focusing on all the things that have gone wrong, perhaps. Okay, and then last but not least, I've got a couple of minutes left, I believe. I just want you, and again, this is something for you to do afterwards, really, is to think about a word on the left that you would like in your life and a word on the right that you feel is something you want to avoid in your life. So a word on the left that you want in your life, and something on the right that you are going to avoid. Now, when we do this in a session with people, we give them a bit of time. Success and failure. Love that. Right, let's talk about that. As you've given me that example, thank you, Nikki. So what we find is that in a room, we then say to people, right, where do you focus your energies? And in that example, they'll say, well, I want success, but I desperately, desperately try and avoid failure. Now, we know that for people to be successful, they have to make mistakes. They have to get it wrong. And that's how we learn. And I think recognizing that we limit ourselves just through the power of words and actions. At the moment, these are only words. They might be our values, but until you do something about them, they are just words on a piece of paper. So what are you doing? This would be my last question to you, I guess. What are you doing to worry less about the things that you want to avoid, because they will stop you achieving the things that you crave in your life? So again, you've got a couple of bits of homework. If you want to email me and tell me how you're doing, I would love to know. I am sarah@lafology.co.uk. UK. But also, just as we're now at the end, I will give out some goodie bags. So if you are Emily Gray, Marcia, Ruth, and if there are a few Ruths, sorry, I don't know who it was. It was Smith, Nikki, and Rob, who said about not giving enough praise. You will get a goodie bag if you want to email me. Again, the email is sarah@lafology.co.uk. If you would like to give any feedback, there is the QR code. I know it was a romp. I tried to do it as slowly as possible, but I know I speak very quickly when I'm excited. If you'd like a longer session in your workplace, do please get in touch and follow this up. We'd love to see you. And just to say, we have another, bye, whoever that was, bye. We do have our next webinar on the 6th of March with the fabulous Louisa Rodriguez. And it's all around, I don't think we've got a title yet necessarily, but it's around empowerment, equality, equity, and belonging. So hopefully she will see you there. That's me done. I was 1 minute over, which for me is on time, quite frankly. So please do give feedback. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Have a great afternoon. Have a great week. And hopefully we'll see you sometime in the future.